Okay, picture this. You're sitting in that silent room, clock ticking, test paper right there. Could be multiple choice, maybe an essay,
Yeah.
solving equations. You're, digging deep into your memory, trying to pull out facts, formulas, dates, definitions. It's such a familiar scene, isn't it? That high stakes exam hall. It's been a cornerstone of education for, well, ages. But what are those tests really getting at? And are they actually setting us up for the world now? A world where, knowledge is everywhere, collaboration's key, and yeah, AI is a thing.
That really is the core question, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, for generations, these tests were the gatekeepers, the measure of whether you were ready. But the whole landscape is shifting so fast, so dramatically. The relevance of that old gate, it's being seriously questioned.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We've gathered quite a stack of sources for you. Everything from, foundational academic papers, cognitive research,
Hmm.
all the way to recent policy docs from different countries and reports on AI's impact. Think of it like we're mining this really rich vein of insight on this exact topic.
Yeah, and our mission here is really to help you navigate all this material. We want to understand why these traditional exams feel so outdated now and how AI is, well, fundamentally shaking up assessment. And maybe explore what a more relevant system could actually look like for the 21st century and, beyond. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so where did this whole traditional exam thing even start? The sources trace it back. It's quite specific, actually.
It's fascinating, yeah. Looking at the history, the logic behind traditional exams, it really borrowed heavily from the late 19th century production line. Seriously, think about it. Students moving through standardized stuff, then getting inspected at set points with timed tests. This system, championed by people like Krauss back in 1894, was basically built for the industrial economy. It valued speed, rote memorization, individual output.
Right, the factory model.
Yeah,
For education.
yeah.
But that feels, gosh, a million miles from today. Knowledge isn't scarce anymore, is it? It's instant, everywhere. Modern work is so collaborative, iterative, and, well, AI is just here.
And that mismatch, that's exactly why the sources point out these really specific, persistent problems with traditional exams. They weren't perfect before AI, let's be
Right.
honest. But AI just makes their limitations uh, impossible to ignore, glaringly obvious.
And maybe the most obvious limitation is just the over-reliance on memorizing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Historically, assessment often just boiled down knowledge to simple recall. Can you remember the fact? But, decades of cognitive psychology tell us that's just not how deep understanding works. Not really. Research by people like Bransford, Brown, and Cocking, way back in 2000, it showed pretty convincingly that real learning happens when you connect ideas,
Hmm.
when you apply them in meaningful, authentic situations.
Wasn't there a really clear example of that in one of the sources from Malaysia, I think?
Yes, exactly. An experiment looking at vocabulary learning, young students. They compared one group just memorizing word lists, rote learning, with another group learning the same words, but through contextual examples, through using them.
Yeah.
And the results, the contextual group remembered a striking 28 percentage points more vocabulary after just 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. The insight there is pretty profound, I think. Deep learning needs connection and application, not just storage.
Yeah.
So traditional tests measuring only recall. They fundamentally misunderstand how we learn best. And that was true even before AI could just, look up the answer instantly.
So we're testing the wrong kind of learning. What else? What other big issues do the sources flag?
Another huge one is test anxiety. And just the sheer pressure of these high-stakes exams. That kind of environment can seriously warp what a student actually knows or can do.
Yeah.
There was a big survey, nearly 1,000 university students in the UAE. It found 64% reported moderate to severe exam anxiety. And what's really concerning is the correlation they found. That anxiety was linked to a real drop in GPA, about a third of a point lower for every unit increase on this standard anxiety scale.
Wow. So the test itself, just the stress of it, can actually pull down the results.
Precisely. And, the stress isn't spread evenly. It often hits students from less advantaged backgrounds harder or those with additional learning needs. So it can actually widen those equity gaps that education is supposed to be closing.
Okay, so not just testing the wrong thing, but the pressure cooker setup can disadvantage certain students. What about how these exams stack up against, real world work?
Yeah, they often don't match up well at all. Think about modern professional work. It's rarely a single time sprint where you get one shot and that's it. It's iterative, right? You draft something, you get feedback, you revise it, you work with others. Boud and Malloy's work pointed this out years ago, this mismatch. Traditional single-sitting tests. They just don't capture that process of creating and refining things. Plus, the feedback you get from an exam usually comes weeks later, way too late to actually help you learn from it for the next thing.
And I'm guessing it's just really expensive to grade more authentic tasks like essays or big projects, especially at scale.
That's a massive driver of the problem, yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. To manage the sheer volume, large-scale assessment systems often fall back on machine-scored, closed-response items. Multiple choice, true, false. They're efficient, sure, but they tend to only measure surface-level stuff. Researchers like Slusmans and Seegers pointed out these formats really struggle to assess deeper reasoning, or ethical judgment, or that complex synthesis of ideas you need in so many fields.
So, okay, these limitations were kind of baked into the system already. Traditional exams were always a narrow view of what someone can do. And then AI arrives on the scene.
Right, and AI doesn't just make these issues worse. It throws them into sharp relief.
Mm-hmm.
And it really accelerates the need for change, urgently.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. How do these tools, like large language models, how do they fundamentally challenge this whole system?
Well, the most immediate thing is just their ability to provide fluent, often accurate answers to many traditional test questions in seconds. We've seen some powerful examples documented in the research, like GPT-4, scored in the top 10% on the Uniform Bar exam, that's the lawyer exam, and it answered most questions correctly on the U.S. medical licensing exam. There was even a study from Stanford showing GPT-4 beating the median student's performance in tough university STEM courses with just a bit of prompting.
So it's not just getting basic facts right. AI can perform at a level that used to take years of human study.
Exactly. And that capability, well, it leads straight to the huge concern about cheating. Surveys showed the scale of this almost immediately, like within months of ChatGPT going public. One survey found 90% of U.S. college students admitted using AI on coursework. 90%. And Pew data shows teenage AI use has doubled since just 2023. This isn't some fringe thing. It's a new reality we just have to deal with.
And those tools meant to detect AI writing. They can be unreliable, right? Sometimes flagging perfectly fine student work, which just messes up the whole student-teacher relationship.
It totally erodes trust, which is so fundamental in education. But here's where the sources pivot to something really important. These same tools, they aren't just cheating aids. They can be incredibly powerful coworkers. They can summarize vast amounts of text, translate complex research, draft initial arguments, even critique your writing. So banning them outright in schools, that risks denying students the chance to build skills they absolutely will need in the modern workplace.
So the question changes. It's not, can you do this without AI? It becomes, how well can you use AI to help you do this?
Precisely. That's exactly what reports from organizations like JISC are suggesting. Assess how students harness AI. Focus on skills like effective prompt design, critically checking AI output for bias or inaccuracies, triangulating information from different sources.
And this challenge goes even deeper, doesn't it? It affects the very definition of what a test is even measuring.
It really does.
Yeah.
This brings us to the whole concept of validity in testing. If the point of an assessment is to infer a human's understanding or skill, but an AI can perform that exact task autonomously, then the test construct validity basically. Does it measure what it claims to measure, reflecting human ability? That validity kind of collapses.
Yeah.
As Messick's foundational work on validity highlighted years ago, a test is only valid for its specific intended purpose.
So if the purpose was measuring human recall or simple human problem solving,
Yeah.
and AI can do it, that breaks the measurement?
Right. It means assessments have to fundamentally pivot. They really do. They either need to focus on evaluating things AI just isn't good at yet. Things like effective empathy, understanding, and sharing feelings, or embodied practice, skills needing physical presence and interaction. Or they need to integrate AI use transparently. Maybe require students to submit logs showing exactly how they used AI in their process.
Okay. So traditional exams are flawed. AI exposes those flaws and even challenges what they measure. If we can't just rely on them anymore, what should we be testing? What do the sources suggest we should value now?
The consensus seems to be a shift towards assessing higher order thinking and metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. Think about updated versions of Bloom's taxonomy, Anderson and Krathwohl's from 2001. It puts skills like creating and evaluating above just remembering or understanding. AI can help with those lower levels, sure, but it still struggles with genuinely novel synthesis in complex, unfamiliar situations, or, tailoring responses to really nuanced cultural or ethical contexts.
So assessments should push students to do the kind of thinking AI isn't really built for, at least not yet.
Exactly. The sources offer some great examples. Instead of testing recall of climate change facts, maybe ask students to design a realistic sustainability plan for their own school. That forces them to justify trade-offs, adapt to local conditions, or have them critically evaluate an AI-generated policy brief, identify its strengths, its weaknesses, potential biases, or even curate, say, a multimedia exhibit explaining complex ideas to different audiences. That requires synthesis, creativity, knowing your audience.
That sounds a lot like problem-based learning or project-based learning.
It absolutely lines up with those approaches, yeah. And the research really backs them up. There was a big meta-analysis, looked at 66 studies on problem-based learning. It showed significantly better academic achievement compared to traditional teaching, and even bigger positive effects for things like skills transfer and student motivation. And in these kinds of projects, AI isn't a cheat tool. It can be a powerful partner, helping analyze data, maybe brainstorm ideas, generate initial prototypes, that kind of thing.
And it makes sense that in a world swimming in AI, just basic digital and AI literacy becomes a core skill itself.
Oh, critically important.
Hmm.
Yeah, you see countries like Finland really leading on this. Their national curriculum now includes algorithmic thinking and AI ethics right from primary school. So assessments need to measure if students understand not just how to use AI, but also its limitations, its potential biases, and how to document their usage transparently, like citing the prompts they used or keeping a log of how AI helped them.
So it's about critically engaging with AI, not just passively using it.
Precisely. And finally, the sources really emphasize developing and assessing those transferable human skills, the ones that go beyond just academic content. Employers are always highlighting skills like teamwork, communication, resilience, ethical reasoning. Even big international tests like PISA are recognizing this. They've added domains like creative thinking, measuring originality, flexibility, elaboration. And you can assess these human skills through things like live simulations or peer evaluations in group work, or maybe reflective journals where students process what they did and learned.
Okay, that gives us a much clearer picture of what we should be aiming to test. Now, the practical part. How do we actually build these kinds of assessments? The sources seem to outline some frameworks.
Yes, there's a useful 5-stage model out there, adapted from Samble, McDowell, and Montgomery's work. First, you start by defining the learning outcomes, but really focus them on those uniquely human capabilities or human AI collaborative skills, things like ethical data stewardship or creative ideation. Second, map the AI landscape for that task. How could AI potentially help students achieve this? What are the risks or challenges AI introduces? Third, craft authentic scenarios. Make the assessment task feel like a real-world challenge with real complexity. Fourth, think about process evidence. What artifacts will students produce along the way, not just the final product, that show their thinking, their learning journey? And fifth, use transparent rubrics. Make it crystal clear how you're evaluating the student's unique contribution and their critical use of AI, separate from just what the AI might have generated.
That framework sounds like a really solid base. And do the sources give practical examples of assessments using this kind of thinking?
They do, yeah. One common idea is guided AI use with clear guardrails. The UK regulator, Ofwat, talks about this. It means setting clear rules for citing AI use, providing training for teachers so they know how to support and assess this kind of work, and having strong policies against misuse, obviously. Another really effective technique is the critique and improve task. Give students an essay or report partly drafted by AI, maybe with some subtle errors or logical flaws baked in. Then ask them to find the weaknesses, make improvements, annotate their changes, and reflect on the AI's limitations or biases.
So that directly tests their critical thinking and editing skills, using the AI output as a starting point.
Exactly. And AI can even be part of the feedback process itself. There are platforms now offering AI-enhanced peer review. They can generate initial comments based on a rubric. There's a small trial, University of Coventry in the UK. They found combining AI suggestions with actual human peer discussion. It seemed to reduce marking time significantly, potentially, but also students felt the feedback quality improved.
Okay, so those are concrete ways to actually integrate AI into the assessment process. What about globally? Are there examples of how different places are starting to tackle this?
We definitely see different approaches emerging. Finland, as we mentioned, is moving strongly towards inquiry-based interdisciplinary projects. Their upcoming 2025 guidelines encourage even primary school kids to use AI tools for, say, gathering data or making presentations on local issues. But crucially, they're assessed not just on the final thing, but on defending their choices and their process in a discussion with the teacher.
So the assessment is really about the thinking behind it, the justification.
Right. Singapore is looking at using AI for more personalized learning and assessment. They're piloting these AI-enabled adaptive learning systems, like in primary math. The system adjusts the questions based on how the student's doing. The UK's approach from Ofqual seems more like pragmatic regulation, trying to balance AI's potential with the need to maintain standards. Some universities there are trying out confined internet exams. Students can access specific, selected AI tools, but they have to explicitly cite how they used AI, detailing their prompts, their rationale.
That's a very direct way to assess that transparent AI use skill.
It is. On the other hand, you look at data from the US, like from Pew Research, you see high rates of teenagers using AI on their own, which definitely fuels cheating worries. But teacher training on how to actually deal with AI in the classroom and in assessment, it seems to be lagging behind. So that highlights a major implementation challenge. And in Australia, you see reports like from Shen, industry white papers really pushing to embed AI literacy across all education levels to build those future workforce skills.
So, okay, there's global agreement that change is needed, but actually doing it is complex and looks different everywhere. What are the biggest roadblocks? The sources must identify hurdles to making this big shift.
Oh, yeah. Institutional inertia is a huge one. Education systems are just vast, often slow to change. To counter that, sources suggest things like piloting dual path systems, run old and new assessments side by side for a while, and publish comparative data on how reliable they both are to try and build confidence in the new methods.
Equity of access must be another big one, right? Not everyone has the same tech or internet at home.
Absolutely. Huge issue. Proposed solutions include things like making sure offline versions of AI tools are available on campus servers, or providing dedicated access for all students within the school. There's also that constant tension between wanting authentic, complex tasks and needing standardization for fair grading across many students. Using detailed analytic rubrics can help there, and having processes like cross-moderation where different graders compare notes can help maintain consistency even with more varied tasks.
And academic integrity, that's still a massive concern for everyone. How do you know the student actually learned it, did the work?
The sources keep coming back to shifting the focus. Move away from just trying to detect AI output towards verifying genuine human understanding. Methods like using Viva's oral exams, where students have to explain, defend, and elaborate on their submitted work, those are incredibly effective. It forces them to really internalize the knowledge and the process. Makes it much harder to just hand in something AI generated without understanding it.
And none of this works if the teachers aren't equipped for it.
Absolutely critical. Teacher capability. The sources all point to needing significant investment in professional development, maybe through focused micro-credentials on AI and education, on assessment design for this new era, and creating mentor networks where teachers who are figuring this out can support their colleagues. That's key too.
So it sounds like building a truly future-ready assessment system. It's not about ditching tests completely. It's more about creating a better balanced ecosystem.
Exactly. That's how the sources often describe it. A balanced system using multiple components, maybe more frequent, lower stakes, formative micro-assessments happening throughout the learning process. Then these authentic, cumulative tasks that demand higher order skills and responsible AI integration. And, crucially, those integrity checkpoints, like the Vivas, or requiring process evidence to really verify genuine human understanding and contribution.
This whole deep dive really brings it home, doesn't it? How the very purpose of assessment is changing. Traditional exams were designed for a totally different time. Information was scarce, a lot of thinking work was routine memorization. So they measured memory and routine application.
But today, AI handles memory and routine tasks incredibly well and getting better all the time. The sources make it really clear. The value now, the uniquely human stuff we need to foster and measure, it lies elsewhere. It's in judgment, empathy, creativity, originality, critical evaluation, responsible collaboration, skills that AI, well, at least for now, just can't replicate in the same human way.
So the way we measure understanding, potential, readiness for the world, it has to evolve. It simply must, to reflect this new reality. So here's something that maybe chew on. In an age where basically everyone has instant access to almost all factual information, what truly differentiates human knowledge, human capability? How does that fundamental shift change what it even means to be educated or well-informed in this age of AI?